Welcome to Up Front, where we talk about leadership and meet so many people on South Vancouver Island who've made a big difference. Certainly, today is no exception. I'm welcoming Stormin Norm Jackson, who is the golf pro here at the Cowichan Golf and Country Club ever since 1990. But more important, he's been honored with the Chamber's Lifetime Achievement Award for 2018. Congratulations, Norm.
Thank you so much, Daphne. It's a great honor and a very pleasant surprise. But as we know, in your community, you do it because you want to do it and not for the accolades.
Well, we're certainly going to talk about the people you've affected and you've worked with throughout many, many years. But I want to start with leadership. We talk about leadership on this program all the time. It means a lot of things to a lot of people: guidance, direction, supervision. You've worked with all kinds of youngsters and plenty of adults going into the elderly here at the golf club. But also you've affected a lot of people through not-for-profit organizations. What is your style of leadership?
Well, for me, I think leading by example. Having grown up playing in sports, you always had that individual who worked hard and did it by example, not so much by words, but when there were words needed, you were able to pass them on. But I think just leading by example is sort of my mantra.
So the toughest times for leaders are usually when there's little or no budget, or there are difficult people. How have you worked, and can you think of any examples through difficult times with leadership?
I can remember this is very vivid in my mind, and it goes back to 1993 when we had some big changes came at Cowichan Golf Club, and there was a bit of a downturn in the golf industry, and there were some changes that had to be made, which were not going to be very pleasant, and it dealt with an individual who was responsible for me getting the job here that we had to downsize, and he was one of the ones that went. And it was a very difficult time because I certainly didn't want him to feel that I was part of the purge, and because I was asked to take over a dual role here at the club. And having to sit down and have that conversation with that individual was not the most pleasant thing, but like anything else, you have to lick the toad and do it, and it was turned out good for all parties. He moved on to something bigger and better, and one door closes, another one opens.
That's great. Yeah, and the optimism is there in you, at least I see it that way. Communication style is so important as well, though. Communication is sort of, I think it's tantamount, and we see it with our membership. The more you communicate to them, the less questions you get, the less innuendo, rumors, that type of thing. But also with your staff of just trying to be as upfront as you can with them, include them in the good and the bad, so that they obviously, because they can be purveyors of information to our membership here, or people in the community. So I think if you're not communicating, you're losing. Yeah. So you've won some great awards in the golf shop as well. The Best Golf Shop of the Year twice for the PGA. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So how do you do that? Is it all about selling a lot of product and making a great profit?
I think there's a bigger criteria than that. You're voted upon by your peers, which obviously is a big feather and something that you feel very good about. But the other thing is it's how you merchandise your shop, how your professionalism in dealing with your suppliers, your vendors, creativity in sales, and not necessarily the biggest numbers, because we have clubs across the country that are all different sizes, so it's tough to go apples to apples. But again, it's just creating a good atmosphere, having good relationships with your vendors, with your members, with your other peers, and being involved in mentoring other young professionals in the business.
So I think you have to be pretty creative to even be in the business of golf now. There's so many golf courses that have closed, and it's just not happening. Remember when Vancouver Island was full of golf courses? And so what's that secret all about? It's about being creative, finding a new market, entertaining more young people to come into the sport, because time is so much more precious now.
Time is of the essence, and we see that because I think people are having children later in life, so that normally in my day, by the time you hit 55, your kids are grown up, they're gone, so you have a little more time. You can take 4 or 5 hours to go and play golf, but where now, I think both parents are very much involved in the parenting, so it's a well-shared thing. So trying to get children and families involved is one of the ways that the business is going to change. And I know that here in the Valley, obviously our population is aging, but we need to keep the young people here. And if we can keep them here, they're going to play golf. I think for us, you have to embrace change. And I think, and I'm not going to just say Cowichan Golf Club, but I think the golf clubs in our area have all embraced change because we're all trying to survive and continue. We've been here since 1947, so it would be a travesty to see something like this, not flourish and continue to be a big part of the community.
Well, that's a great note to end on when we take a brief break, because we're going to talk about the many ways you contribute back to this community. So many people know you from your work with not-for-profit organizations, the commitment of time, energy, humor that you give. But Norm Jackson hasn't always had an easy road. We're going to talk about some of the times that have been most difficult for him when we come back after this break. With 30 years of golf experience, Stormin' Norm Jackson is still extremely busy right here at the golf course as well as in the community. And we want to look back a few years. I was just telling you that I was watching Mayberry, of all things, on television. There was this great family scene and everybody was drinking milk. Then flash ahead to sports. You grew up in hockey and with golf and so many other sports that have as a sponsor breweries, cigarette companies. The days have changed, but you got hooked partway through that experience.
Interesting story, and we look back at how acceptable alcohol was, being involved in all sports, and it was just part of the culture. And I think if you had any tendencies to continue on and didn't know when to turn the party off, you were quite easily led astray. And I happened to take that turn in the road, and luckily for me, I met some people along the way that kind of coached me along and mentored me, and I've been in recovery for 37 years. So, I look back and you think, can you blame it on sport? No, I mean, I think that was just the culture in those days, and I think if you had any addictive tendencies, that just helped you get there. So
yeah.
But you look today. It's how culture has changed, and there's more awareness, and that we're looking at healthy lifestyles and moderation, and
much more. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Your sobriety, but also the fact that culture and society does still put pressure on people of all ages, and as you say, you just sometimes see a turn in the road. So let's talk about the other side, the healthy aspect of sports and fitness. We were talking about some of the elderly people that are golfing still today. What would you recommend for people in their lives to stay healthy and well? Besides, we all know about eat well and keep up your exercise.
Keep your exercise. But I think the one thing that sport, and whether it be whether you go to the gym or we talk to the elderly people that play here. We have people that are 95 years old still walking 9 and 18 holes of golf. The biggest factor that keeps them going is it gives them their social. They're not sitting at home. We see many of them who have lost their loved ones, and all of a sudden, what do I do? And yet they have a safe place to come to, and they know people. And I think it's just wonderful to see how they start to flourish and how they get through their grieving process. But even healthy people, they will come here in the winter, even when it's raining, and just walk. They don't necessarily play golf, but they come out and walk, and they hang out with their friends. And I think that's the really, really important part, is social is part of exercise.
Connection.
And it keeps you healthy.
What's your regime, Norm? You got to share it with us.
Well, I'm going to go back probably 15 years ago, and I mean, I grew up playing sports and being physically fit for the most part, and you just kind of, you're playing golf and you kind of forget about that there's a little more to that than just swinging it. And I was lucky to meet some people who started a new gym. We got involved in fit camps and changing some eating deals. I just thought, you know what, can I change habits here? And having been in the disciplines of sports, I have the discipline to do it. And so now it's, boot camps. We're lucky we have a great community center here, which I'm a senior, so you get a bit of a break. But have that where you do the fit camps. I do a little bit of yoga, which truly helps in my stretching and keep me somewhat limber, and still play old-timers hockey, which there I get my social again.
The old-timers hockey is absolutely amazing. I've met some of the 80-somethings and 90-somethings who are still out on the ice, and they're playing a brutal game. I've seen a few of them in Victoria.
Those competitive spirits run very, very high. Deep. I see how feisty we can get, and you say to yourself that, whoa, hold it. It's just a game. We're 60, 70-year-old individuals, and you need to kind of back off a little bit, but it's still fun.
So the other side is community. I don't think you've ever said no. There are so many people that you've worked with and done things for. So you're either an auctioneer or you're an MC, but you're raising a lot of money, and that's got to feel great. What are some of the recent achievements in terms of raising money?
Well, I think that, raising money is, we've done the Hospital Foundation, which I am a member of that board, so that is near and dear to me. But you look into our community, and I've been blessed with working in an industry that has given me a good livelihood. So to be able to come back and do some things for people that are maybe not as fortunate, and where they just need that little leg up, it makes it easy to come and do it and help them along. Because sometimes when people start an event, especially golf, which we do, they don't know how to prepare for it, so we coach them along, and at the end of the day, hopefully, we raise some money for their charities.
What are some of the highlights for you in terms of helping groups and organizations and people one-on-one?
Well, I think the neat thing is that, like for me, kids are huge, and I've been lucky to have helped a little bit with kids sport, and to hear the stories of where children have been able to come and play sports. Being involved in the North American Indigenous Games, they had a legacy, and it helped some of our First Nations children, come and play golf. And some of those kids that have come to play sports have come to work at the golf club here, and it's kind of neat. And then you see them 15 years later, they're engineers or they're lawyers, or they're contributing to their community because somebody helped them along. You
told me that you had a wonderful upbringing, great parenting, wonderful siblings. You had a lot of fun. Tell me about the connection to golf, because it goes back to when you were a pretty young kid, when you were caddying for your dad.
I was a 12-year-old youngster in Kamloops, and I think for my dad to get out and play golf, he had to take me. So I think it was one of those things. But I got to caddy for him, and that evolved into playing the game. And I also got to work at the golf club as a 12-year-old. I cleaned clubs, and in those days you could hitchhike to the golf course. You were never, times are different, but you'd have your golf club and you'd put your thumb out and somebody would give you a ride to the golf course. So, and it was a great way for me to bond with my dad. It was because he was a traveling salesman, so he was away during the week, and it was an opportunity for him and I to hang out.
And he still golfs, right?
He still golfs at 90 years old.
That's fabulous.
It is. It's fantastic.
Great role modeling there.
Great mentor and great role model. So my dad was a professional hockey player, played in the old Western or Pacific Coast Hockey League, and ended up sports for him got him into his work career. He worked for the same company for some 35 years. So sports has been a big part of our family's life.
And one of the wonderful, rich aspects for you, I know, are 2 grandchildren that you have now.
Yes.
Are you playing sports with them?
We do. And it's funny, my little grandson, who is 8, he loves soccer, hockey, baseball. Baseball probably his first love. We were playing catch over in Vancouver with him, and he says, Grandpa Storm, you can't throw it so hard. I'm still a little kid. And but he's a character. And my granddaughter, who she's very active in Irish dance, and I think she's following a little bit in some of my footsteps, is that she enjoys public speaking and does it at her school and that type of thing. So very, very rewarding.
Yeah, very rewarding for sure. Well, there are a number of people in this area, pretty high profile people. I've got some words for you when we come back after this break. Some of the causes have been lighter, some have been much, much more important and urgent. And one of them that Norm Jackson has done a lot for is the Cowichan Women Against Violence Society. And Jane Stirk said, you were always able to keep the crowd engaged and amused and working many different directions and talking to people and using the time effectively. And she goes on and on and on, all to raise money for this really important organization providing housing for women who have left abusive situations. So you raised $100,000, which is not at all a small amount of money for that project. So congratulations on that success, Norm. It's a group that really does need so much assistance. It must have been pretty easy for you to come forward and say, I'll help.
Very much so. You forget that we have that in our community, but it's not talked about. It's, you sort of see, and again for me, when they came and asked, I thought, well, I really don't know much about it, but you know what, obviously it's a good cause. I'm surprised at the dollar amount. It's kind of shocking, and obviously, when you look at it, and not just doing it for Women Against Violence, when they tell their stories, it's tear-jerking for me. Mm-hmm. It gives you goosebumps to see younger people, a little bit older people who have been in abusive relationships and what they have to go through, and they have no place to go, and to be able to raise amounts of money that at least gets them started, and there's a better awareness. But that being said, you look at it and you think, wow, this is pretty cool that the next year you come to do it and someone comes and tells their story, how that this has been a very positive experience for them, and that they've been able to reap the benefits of a fundraiser like this. And I think there's some neat things coming along. From what I understand, is that house is going to get built. And
yeah, that's fabulous, isn't it?
But I'm just an out front guy. The people behind the scenes are really the ones that they go out and they get the auction items, and I get to just be the guy up front, and I know enough of the people that we can cajole them and try and sneak some of the money out of their wallets.
Well, there's lots of tributes being paid. Ernie Meswetti says, for almost 20 years, you've been a key volunteer, a sponsor, a prize donator, an auctioneer, raising $35,000 for ALS. There's a lot of sports people that have been affected by ALS, interestingly enough. And so that kind of goes full circle for you, assisting that organization.
It really does. Interesting that the Old Timers hockey team that I play for and that Ernie is a member of, we had two of our goaltenders who succumbed to ALS, and Joe Doherty and Rick Wilkinson. And we had our 11th annual mini hockey tournament, which ran in conjunction with Hometown Hockey. We raised $5,000 that night, and phenomenal. It's 65 guys come and play in a mini hockey tournament, and we do that. My PGA is involved in ALS, so to be able to see a group of 65 old hockey players hanging around and raising some money, and more importantly, remembering our friends who have passed along the way.
Right. Ernie as well, because he knows so much about parks and recreation and sports here. He's with the municipality of North Cowichan, mentioned the great contribution he made to Kids Sport. Kids Sport has given so many kids a great start in sports who weren't able to have that in any other way. So it's a really important place for you to be involved.
It's huge, and not only just because I'm a golf guy, but I'm also a hockey guy. I played ball as a kid, all the sports, and I was lucky enough that my family had the resources to be able to put us kids, my sisters and I, into sports, but I knew that there were others that didn't. So to be able to be involved with like-minded people, and again, we did our the Kids Sport on Saturday night in conjunction with Hometown Hockey, and we did three live auction items and raised $35,000 or $4,000 with just that. And to think how many children will now reap the benefits of that money, and I forget what the number is. It was like 10 or 12 more children will be able to play sports, and we know that sports are healthy, and it's great networking. It's a great way to learn discipline. It's you learn social interaction.
Very much so. So you do things though that you've never done before when you go out there raising money and giving your time and emceeing. You were telling me that you went down to Victoria to assist with the BCS PCA. So Was it money to assist for adoptions?
For adoptions
for the animals?
For animals.
Yeah.
And it was I think they called it the Paws for the Cause, and I did it back-to-back years. The first year I did it with one of the DJs from Cool FM. We had an absolute blast, but I was driving down and I'm thinking, oh my God, what do I know about SPCA? What do I know about dogs? And I don't know a soul at this event. But once we got there, and people are very good about making sure you have an itinerary, and from there you just ad-lib it and hope that you get some interactive and fun people that you can kind of cajole, and once you get one or two that you know you can pick on, it seems to go well.
I have to ask you though, Norm, with all these various events, have there been disappointments along the way? Have there been times when it didn't turn out? And what did you feel about that?
My attitude,
how do you deal with that?
My attitude toward those events, sure, there's times when you're standing there auctioning and you're
there's
thinking,
nobody bidding.
And there's nobody bidding.
I hate that moment.
It's not a very fun moment, is it? And but I always look at the adage is that, one, you let the people know this is for charity, so we're raising money for charity. Secondly, whatever you get for that item is more than that the charity had before they started the night. So look at it from a positive aspect. And
that's a good way to see it.
And not, and there will be the odd time that I'm not going to let you in on a trade secret, but there's the odd thing that you have to do to make it so that, because there's people who donate those items, and you really don't want to embarrass them.
No, that's very true.
Especially with their generosity. But sometimes you're up there and you're kind of, whoa, am I lost? But then somebody will pump it up, and who cares about the charity?
You can take that adrenaline rush, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that adrenaline rush.
I have to say, we're going to end on this note from Gretchen Hartley, who worked with you during time raising money for hospice, the Cowichan Valley Hospice, who serves a huge area here, Duncan, Lake Cowichan, all around the valley. She said you were such a great sport about dressing up, whether it was as a 1950s golfer or a pirate, or this year as a bandit for the Western theme, and that you were lively and effective. Nice testimonial.
That's very kind of Gretchen, and Gretchen is she's a very passionate individual about hospice, and it's an interesting story. And you always, I'm sure that people get involved in charities obviously because they've been touched by something one way or the other, and I know that I lost my mother, and she went to hospice in Penticton. And I could not believe how the dignity with which they treated my mother, and with which they treated us as a family and helped us through that grieving process. But so when they came to me, yes, let's do this. I understand why you're raising funds and how important it is to families, and how important it is in the grieving process to learn how to do it. And these people, how compassionate they are. So so they're doing a great job, and they've got some exciting things happening this coming year. So I think the charity movement in areas especially in the Cowichan Valley here, with hopefully a new hospital, a new hospice house, that we're growing in the right direction.
Super. Well, Gretchen says you have a big heart. That's quite clear. We'll be back right after this break. We're at the Cowichan Golf and Country Club with the golf pro, Storm and Norm Jackson. And of course, you probably know Norm from many of his other pursuits as well. But I want to talk about people who figured into your life and really had a great impact. And we talked about your dad. We've talked about others who've surrounded you. What about your mom? What kind of an influence on you was your mom?
She was probably the biggest influence as far as being a volunteer. Growing up, she was involved in minor hockey. She was the secretary. She was a librarian at the school, and she took on projects of children who were having some challenges, and kind of worked with them. So she really led by example, and always made it clear to us children that, you know, you have to do a little bit. You have to give back a little bit, whether it be at school or wherever you end up working as a part-timer as a young child. So she was a huge influence in that aspect. And she was such a charitable and warm person. So just by having her around, it made you want to do it.
Lovely. And you were the oldest brother, right?
I was the oldest brother.
So did you give leadership to those two sisters then?
I maybe set some examples that made life a little more difficult for them, but yes, I was a leader, and I was a spoiled child because I was the oldest, and there was lots of adulation. But we, as older people now, we quite laugh at those stories about how when I was playing junior hockey, I would get the steak, and then they would get the bologna for supper. So
that's not fair.
I know it's totally not fair, but you know, that was a different era, and at least we can joke about it now.
Oh, that's great. So your family dynamics are still close?
Still very
still close to your sisters?
Yes, very close.
And your son who lives in Vancouver?
Son lives in Vancouver. He's also in the golf industry, works for Adidas Canada, and sort of following in my footsteps. And he's doing a great job, and I get to see him a lot because I'm part of his territory. Right.
Well, it's kind of infectious with you. You live, breathe sports. It's bound to be picked up by family members.
Just by osmosis. Yes.
Others that have benefited from your teachings, Norm, have been kids at Camosun. So how were you involved at Camosun? What was the program?
So in my role as a PGA member, I was invited to be a teacher for 1 year, and it was called Product Knowledge, and because our golf shop had been recognized as a good golf shop, I went to work there for a year. I was very, very lucky to have a great class, and I have two former students who have worked for me, one still working for me presently. But the neat thing is to see all the class members who are still in our industry. We had a class of about 30, and there's probably 23 or 24 of them are still involved in the golf business.
That's fabulous.
It is truly fabulous.
And obviously then they were really engaged about the whole process and fell in love with the sport.
They loved the program, and they, I mean, I wasn't the only one that helped them along, but we get to reminisce, and obviously I get the odd phone call, and Norm, what could I do, or what should I do about this?
That's great. How long ago was it that you were teaching?
2000, year 2000.
Great. Well, it's going to be a big night at the Black Tie Awards, which is happening on April 7th at Brentwood College. Chambers Lifetime Achievement Award winner, who will be presented again, is Norm Jackson. Congratulations. How are you going to feel that night? You don't have to MC. You don't have to auction anything. You can actually relax.
It's going to feel very weird, actually. And I think the most challenging part for me is I know I'm going to have to give a speech. Usually any of the talking I do is all ad-libbed, but I think the neat thing about this whole thing is to be a part of our community. And one of the things that I'd said when I talked to Elizabeth is, you know, are you going to continue to work for doing what you're doing? And I'm going, yeah, as long as they keep me here, obviously, and my health is good. But I think that, my goal would be is that we live in such a beautiful place. We're fortunate to work in a place that we work, and that hopefully we can get our children to stay in the valley, create things that can make them stay. I grew up in a small town, and most of my friends, they moved away. And we live in such a great place that hopefully we can do that, and we can pass that message on. And I know there's lots of businesses and people being recognized on those nights, which I think is probably more important than a Lifetime Achievement Award, because they're the contributors to employing young people and keeping our community vibrant.
Good for you. Well, I'll be looking forward to hearing your words. I'm going to be delighted to be there myself, emceeing the whole event, and Shaw will be there, and we're really looking forward to it. So thank you for your time today, Norm.
Thank you for being here. It's just a pleasure to have another MC and to visit, and you've made this very easy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Be watching next month. We'll talk again about leadership with another one of the members who is making a difference on South Vancouver Island. Bye-bye for now.